Okay, folks, James from jamespocketgolf.com. Just a few little tidbits about how we want to basically use the ground. I think that's the best term to use, right? Use the ground. And we've got Sam Snead up. Found this on YouTube, downloaded it to my V1. Really good example. So let's kind of go through what he's doing with the ground, right? So what you find, and don't forget, the information that I'm giving people is all based on what the modern pros are doing, the data we're getting from the pros when they're hitting balls off one of these pressure mats, right? So what I found is, generally speaking, the shorter the club. So let's say when they're hitting pitching wedges, there's less pushing down, there's less loading under the trail foot, and for a shorter period, right? So they might only push down under the trail foot to about P2 before they start, transferring the pressure and start getting on the front foot, right? We call that an abbreviated trace, right? But you can see with Sam Snead. I mean, he's actually swaying his hips a little bit more over his trail foot, and that's I wouldn't say that's what we see with the modern pros. That there's a few of them that have a little bit of a sway over their back foot in the takeaway, but by the time they get to the top, they've actually moved them forward again, right? But with the modern pros as well, what you find is they're pushing with the longer clubs, right? They're pushing down harder under the trail foot. They're loading harder. There's more force, and they're loading for longer, right? So that's the important thing to remember. So short clubs, just a little bit of loading, right, before you start getting on your front foot. The longer clubs, there's more pushing down. There's more force. And for a longer period. That's generally the pattern you see with the pros nowadays, right? But I think the important thing to remember, whether you're hitting driver, whether you're using your long clubs or your short clubs, is that before that club actually reaches the top of the swing, they're starting to push down under the forward foot before the club gets to the top. Right, so then you've got that separation of upper body and lower body, right? The lower body starting to go towards the target before the club's finished its journey to the top. I think that's really important to understand. So longer loading up under the trail foot, then he starts to push down there under the lead foot just before the club finishes getting to the top. Look, so the club head is still going back, but you can see that left knee starting to go. That he's pushing down into the toes of his lead foot, and then as he starts down, carries on pushing into the toes, right? And that's another thing you see. Just the data, the feedback from the modern pros hitting balls off a pressure mat is when they start down, and don't forget, they all start down when they lift the heel off the ground like Bubba Watson or Sam Snead, or whether they keep the lead foot on the ground on the backswing, they all seem to start down with this squatting look, right? That squatting look with the front leg. Now, you're only going to get that if you push out towards the toes of your left foot. So that's why I'm a big proponent of having this left foot turned out, right? As you're looking down, try and get that left foot turned out towards sort of 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, right? And that's going to help you not only push out towards your toes, but also get that squat where the lead knee's going forward, right? The next thing to understand is, as you're pushing down, right, in that lead foot now, you want to max that out by about that point. So when the shaft gets about vertical, right, you should have maxed out all the pushing down under that lead foot, right? So you want the most amount of pushing down by that point. And that's why, once you understand that concept, That's why you see a lot of them jump off the ground now, right? And now he didn't quite jump off the ground, but he certainly kind of spun his foot round, look, right? That left foot is at that angle. But then as he's finishing, you can see how it's spinning round. Now his toes are facing the target, right? So I think that's kind of like a, you know, his left foot's almost airborne, but he just keeps his heel on the ground, and that's the next point, right? So we're going into the toes to start the downswing to get the squat. We then want to push down the hardest by that point, shaft vertical. And then if you've pushed down the hardest, right, you've got the most amount of force under that foot. Well, now the ground's going to start to act like a trampoline. So if you've pushed down, it's going to start pushing back up. And that's when you start to see the legs straighten up, right? And you can see Sammy Snead here, his leg starts to straighten up. And then through impact and just after impact, look how that left knee snaps back and he gets into the heel, right? So toes to start the downswing, push down in that lead foot as hard as you can by that point, shaft vertical. But then as your leg starts to straighten up, right, just allow the pressure to move back into the heel, right? I think that's a beautiful way to feel what you need to be doing, and you know, if we slow a lot of the modern guys down, they're all doing this, right? It's into the toes, it's pushing down hard. Because they're pushing down so hard there at P5, maybe just past P5, shaft vertical, they're jumping off the ground through impact and after impact. You see a lot of the guys start to do that. So Sam Snead's almost jumping off the ground there, look. But he's more sort of spinning round on his heel. I think that's a really good way to kind of understand the footwork a little bit and understand the patterns of a lot of the best players through history.